All right, we're doing the STAR practice, and now we're annotating our second selection in the 2015 release. All right, one of the first things we do when we get to the next page, we've just done another selection, is we read the directions, which say read the next two selections, then choose the best answer to each question. What does it tell me? What do the directions tell me right now about this passage, about the type of it? I noticed the keyword two selections. So what does that mean?
It's going to be two passages.
Excellent. It's going to be two passages. So this is going to be our big compare contrast selection. So when we know it's two passages, there is a strategy for us. Do you remember what that is?
Read the first passage,
Good.
then answer the questions.
Mm-hmm.
Read the second passage, then answer those questions.
Good.
Then
And then we do the combination
Yeah.
questions. Excellent. That's exactly what we do, because otherwise you can forget information. So let's go ahead and before we read the selection, one of the first things we do is we now know that it's a paired passage, but we're going to go ahead and annotate our questions because that gives us an idea of what we're looking for in that passage. So let's turn to page 15, question 11. And we're going to go ahead and label our question types. Some ideas of question types, just as a reminder, since we're doing a new video, would be AP, author's purpose, POV, point of view, context clues, CC, DC is a big one. That's inference. That's the one that a lot of people miss. It's also known as Fig 19 for TEKS. It means you're inferring, you're noticing something, and then you're having to put it together in your head. Inference. Another one is MI, which stands for what?
Main idea.
Main idea. Excellent. And what else do we have? How about cause and what? An effect, cause and effect. And actually you can have your compare contrast questions, which I use the Venn diagram for. Okay, we're going to start with that. Oh, I know another one. What about if you have figurative language, like a simile? We can write, excellent, FL. And then if we're talking about plot or theme, you can go ahead and write LE for literary elements. And when you're doing that, you'll often draw a plot pyramid if you need to, where you can mark certain events on that plot pyramid just to make it handy for you. Okay.
What about fiction and nonfiction?
Oh my gosh, that's great. We identify the passage type as fiction or nonfiction because that means two different things. If it's nonfiction, we know we're looking at a who, what, where, when, why. If it's fiction, we're looking more at the literary elements. Excellent. Okay, so actually, before we do that, you've got me. Let's go back. We need to do this. Let's look at the title. Can writers predict the future? Do we think just by looking at the picture in the title, can we make a prediction about the genre? Is it going to be fiction or nonfiction?
Nonfiction.
It's going to be nonfiction. So let's go ahead and put NF. So we are most likely looking for facts. And I'm going to add one more thing. Since it's nonfiction, one of the things we do put is facts. If we're looking for a fact to support a main idea, then we're going to underline it in the text to find it. Okay, so the author includes information about President Kennedy's idea and NASA to show that. The author includes information about President Kennedy's idea. What do you think is key here? We know President Kennedy's idea, and NASA, we could do both of those, to show that. When I see to show, I always know we're going to have to do some inference. So it's going to be a DC, drawing conclusions. So why does the author include these ideas? So it's going to be a why. The why question is a DC. And all we do before we read the passage is we are not even reading through the answers. We are just reading through the question. What is the best summary of the selection? The best summary, our trigger would be summary. And actually, we didn't write it here, but we're going to go ahead and put summary. Our summary strategy for nonfiction is actually going to be who, what, where, when, why, and sometimes how. And with that in mind, we already know how we're going to need to annotate the passage. We're going to need to annotate when we read for who, what, where, when, why. And then we'll see what's in that answer. Okay, let's go to the number 13. According to this selection, one reason that humans develop new types of technology is that they want to. What do you think looks important in this question?
New type of technology.
Okay, good. New types of technology. That's something. So one reason that humans develop is that they want to. So do you think one reason might also be something important?
Yeah.
Let's look at that. So one reason that they develop new types of technology is they want to. So they develop it for something else. In one way, it could be a DC. We're not quite sure, right? We know we're not quite sure. Or it could also be cause and effect. Maybe we're going to have to come back and look at that once we read the passage. So we might put cause and effect question mark or DC question mark. I'm not sure. Based on the information the author includes about the three science fiction writers, the reader can conclude that the author believes that the writers were. Let's think about that. What looks important in that sentence? Based on the information the author includes
Science fiction.
about the three science fiction writers, the reader can conclude. Conclude also has to do with drawing what? Conclusions. Excellent. DC. So we know this is going to be an inference question. So we're going to have to read why he includes these three science fiction writers, and then make our assumption about what that's about. Okay. Now, that's the first selection. For the next selection, we have different questions. So we're going to pause right now as we read as we annotate our first selection. Actually, let's finish this part. Okay. Can writers predict the future? Now, we're going to keep in mind, since this is nonfiction, we're going to annotate with a who, what, where, when, and why. Okay? So the human race is constantly seeking to expand its knowledge and to discover answers in the mysteries of the unknown. This desire to learn has led to technological and scientific advancements that have transformed our world. Well, we always know in a nonfiction work that the title is going to be important. The title is going to be the topic. Title is the topic, and which is often like the main idea. I'm just putting that to remind us. And then in this first paragraph, it's going to really tell us what's the purpose of reading it. So the human race, we know, is seeking to expand its knowledge, and the desire has learned to technological and scientific advancements. I'm just going to keep that. So this desire to learn, human race is constantly seeking to expand its knowledge, has led to. So this is a cause, and that's an effect. I'm just going to put that. That's what's led to that. In 1961, one thing I've learned is to go ahead and circle any dates so they just stand out. President John F. Kennedy believed it was possible for the United States to be the first country to land a man on the moon. Many disagreed with Kennedy and thought that his idea was pure science fiction. 8 years later, on June 20th, 1969, Apollo 11 landed on the moon. Humans not only traveled into space, but also walked on the moon. So that's pretty amazing. I'm just going to put an exclamation point to remind me of that. President Kennedy's goal was achieved, and the world as we knew it changed. So we know right there, I'm going to do the delta sign for change. So there's something that really changed by this progress. So what do you think this could be about? If we were doing a who, what, where, when, why, what do you think we already know?
When.
Okay, we do know when. Excellent. And we also know who. We've got a who, we've got John F. Kennedy, and we've got a when with dates. Great. And we also know what changed. What changed it? You can put here. What changed was that we landed on the moon. And let's put colon, humans on moon for that, because that seems pretty important, don't you think? Yes. And the dates we just circled. We didn't need to write a lot of things for that. Now, President Kennedy was not the first to imagine sending a man to the moon. A little more than 100 years earlier, okay, here's another date. 100 years earlier, in 1865, same thing, science fiction writer Jules Verne also imagined space travel. He put his innovative thoughts in a book called From the Earth to the Moon. Well, we already know he's going to talk about 3 different scientists or something. So I'm going to go ahead and either, would you like to box the name or circle the name?
Box.
Let's box it, because we do that in our other work. So I'm going to box President Kennedy, and I'm going to box Jules Verne, because I can tell these people seem pretty important. And we already box for who when we meet a character, right? In our fiction. So let's box it for the nonfiction. He puts his innovative thoughts in a book called From Earth to the Moon. We know the book is going to be important. I do B with a circle for book. In it, he described a lunar expedition. What does lunar mean? I'm going to have to think about that. Not sure. Lunar, since I'm not sure about it, I'm going to put, I'm going to have to come back to that word and use my context clues. In it, he described a lunar expedition that is so eerily close to the Apollo 11 mission that a reader would think he was predicting the future. He called his spaceship with a crew of 3 the Columbiad. In his book, the spacecraft launches from Florida, and the United States Navy recovers it from the Pacific Ocean. In 1969, Florida was the launch site of the Apollo 11. The command module was named the Columbia. When the spacecraft returned to Earth, it splashed down in the Pacific, where the Navy recovered it along with its 3 astronaut crew. Verne accurately delineated, I'm not sure about that word, so I'm going to put a question mark just to know to come back to it. The future, when the technology of his own time made his predictions seem highly unlikely to occur. How could he have known that his far-fetched idea was not so far-fetched after all? Well, we've got a who, and we know he did what? He wrote a what? He wrote a book. So let's put the what is the book. Who is Jules Verne? The what is the book? And we had did we have a when?
Yes.
Yep, we had the when. We had the when, which we've just circled. We don't have to do a whole lot, but we know it's right there. And then do we have what did he want to do? Is there a why? Not sure about that. So far we've got those. Okay, like Verne, other science fiction writers have accurately described inventions that are commonplace today. Many of H.G. Wells's ideas, for example, have become a reality. Let's just put a check mark. So somehow these ideas have become a reality. I'm just going to put a change. The delta sign for change, just so we know something's happened there. Considered to be one of the best science fiction writers of all time, Wells. Oh wait, is this a new person? H.G. Wells. So let's go ahead and box him. H.G. Wells. And so that is a who. H.G. Wells. Okay. Considered by many to be one of the best science fiction writers of all time, Wells wrote about lasers, wireless communication, automatic doors, and other gadgets that did not exist at the time of his writings. But today, these gadgets are considered an integral part of our society that we probably cannot imagine living without them. Wells also envisioned space travel in his 1901 book, The First Men in the Moon. I just feel like maybe they're going to say something about that, envision space travel. And here's his book, The First Men on the Moon. So we have a who and we have a what with a book, right? Another book title. And while we're looking at it, we always want to notice our text features. Here we put TF for text feature. And what do we have here? The caption says, here's our caption, which is always there for a reason since it's star. This illustration from Jules Verne's novel shows a rocket train traveling to the moon. By the way, I wasn't really sure about what that was about with Jules Verne, but what do you think lunar expedition means? Where's the rocket going?
Towards the moon.
Towards the moon. Do you think lunar might have to do with moon?
Yes.
Yeah, so let's put moon. The moon expedition. Okay, so the first men in the moon, we're almost done. And I've lost the rest of the paper. Page 13, here it is. Describes a journey to the moon on a spaceship made from an anti-gravity material. Anti-gravity material. We can only speculate. I'm going to put the squiggly line. Squiggly means I'm not quite sure that these writers might have inspired those who later turned their fiction into reality. Okay, in 2012, another date, a Mars rover developed by NASA, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, landed on the planet Mars. No one would have been more excited to hear the news than Ray Bradbury, one of America's greatest science fiction writers. So that's who he is, right? One of America's greatest science fiction writers. In 1950, he wrote about travel to Mars in his book, The Martian Chronicles. So here we have another book. And do we have a who?
Yes.
We have who, and we have a what. The book describes an expedition that lands humans on Mars. The story then tells how the people inhabit the planet and bring their families to live there. Since NASA has successfully landed a rover on Mars, Bradbury's fantasy may yet become reality. The Mars rover, appropriately called Curiosity, is gathering information that will help NASA plan a manned mission to Mars sometime in the 2030s. So we're talking future. Let's just put that future. When future. We also have a when, don't we, at the top? 2012.